here's the here's what I'm building. Here's all the pictures and the WIP that goes with it, with the dates that you posted them. So it's a really great tool for organizing, and you can add each step and it does timestamps just automatically. So you're not like, oh, when did I do this piece, or how long did this take me? Like, you just put it in and it's done. Which is super, super nice. It is very much like Cost Planner on steroids. I've also now gotten in the habit of using the resource library. It's still growing, but as you upload pictures, you can make the option of keeping them private for yourself or allowing the community to see them. And if you allow the community library to see them, people can use your references. I actually was looking at Hua Chang and some other Heaven Official Blessing costumes. So I just typed in the characters' names and a whole bunch of hits popped up. And I was able to pull some of the other really great references. Somebody had the art book and just posted all the pages of the art book. So I just pulled those off and was like, this is so amazing because I do not own that art book. And so now I really actually try to find really good resources to put into the library, not only for myself, but for other people that might be cosplaying from that particular one. Yeah, and I'm actually working in event tracking more. We're doing more event tracking. So if you guys have any ideas for events and like how you want to see those labeled, message me because I can talk to them. But also, it's just a really great place, especially because it's not like pressure for, here's the finished piece. It's pressure for, I want to see how you sewed that, which I really like. And this is one of my finished pieces. This is Deuce. This is kind of a layout. Actually, we'll probably have Sam pull up their the full one so you can actually see how the app works itself. But these are just some references of like what I have. You can see my reference library of the pictures I used. You can categorize them too. So if you're looking for something particular, they've now set it up so you have a color palette. So you can put your pictures in and get a color palette.
I like that because it reminds me of like where I need to focus more.
Exactly. And it's so cool because if you're not the type to want to share any of this information, you can also toggle it off. Like, people don't have to see your profile or your pictures. It's just if you want that community aspect, people can look on your page and see what you're working on. You can also add a primary list of materials you're using and skill sets you're using so people can get an idea of what you do and what you work on. It's also broken down by like, here's the skills I'm doing and here's the skills I'm learning, which is really nice. If you're doing something new, maybe you can connect with another cosplayer who's either a master in lighting, like I'm looking at the lighting pieces now, or somebody who's also interested and wants to learn alongside you. But here's a little bit of the tracking process. Like I said, we can probably pull it up so you can see the actual thing in action, but you can break it down by whatever you want. I usually go from top to bottom just because that's my organization, but you can rearrange the bars as you need them. If you forget a piece and need to add something in, you can just put them in whatever order you like. It's based off of percentages. So you can put in how long it takes to do something as well as how far the progress is, and then see your overall progress, which for me is a big winner when I'm getting near the end, like con crunches hit me and I'm like, oh, I'm at 90%. We're almost there, kids. But it's super fun. It's such a great place to finally have absolutely everything in one place. And you can choose to just post up your WIPs, but they'll ask if you want to share your WIPs. So like, it'll automatically be shared onto the social media side of the app. And you can put a little tidbit about like, oh, this is what I'm working on right now, and here's the techniques I used. Or you can just post it for yourself and people can always look on your page. But yeah, that's Hendo. She's also a lovely human that is working on that. But it's so great to be part of a community. I have found that a lot of like my building process is honestly getting more exciting because I am part of a community now and I am getting more involved with other competitors. And it's more of just like, not just the green room conversation. It's like we're all discussing stuff and seeing each other build, asking each other questions, and like really like getting each other excited, especially when you find somebody who's competing in like something that you like or you're already building or a series that you're in love with. I get so hyped when I see other Twisted Wonderland cosplayers that compete. Like, it's just something I get super excited about. And honestly, I've made a couple of friends just by posting my WIPs on the social media aspect of the app and people commenting, asking me questions about what I'm doing or how I did something. And now we follow each other on the app and discuss what we're doing.
No, and like with the push on like, especially like Facebook and Instagram, where it's like you want the finish thing, I find this so handy because like I like sharing my WIPs, but it's like this is a place where they are super well received and people are it's just really a community focused thing, and it's really wonderful to see people building things and learning skills and getting excited about sharing unfinished things, which
and instead of like, one of my biggest things that was really rough on me in the beginning when I was competing is I'd build the whole costume and then I'd build the build book last. And by then you're tired, you're stressed, you're probably con crunching, you're going to forget things, you're going to forget details, put like not right the right thing in. Now, as I'm writing things out on my cost gear, I'm literally doing my progress on cost gear. So I can just copy and paste everything into my build book. Like, it's all done. I already have my notes written. I have every step I've done all written out, and it's done as I'm doing it. So at the very end, now I'm just copying, pasting, and making my build book look pretty, and not focused on, oh, what did I like? Did I forget a step? Am I forgetting something? Because it's all in one place and it's all organized how I would organize my build book. So I can just literally copy paste and then I'm done with that. And it's been such a godsend. It made do so much faster.
It also helps people who have, like, whether you're a newer cosplayer or an experienced cosplayer, all of us are always trying new techniques, and it really helps you understand just how much learning a new technique, like how much time learning a new technique can take, because you'll see the work in progress, you'll see what people are doing, you'll see them, hey, I messed up here. Like, I even have on my Safina, like, I made a hood, I hated the damn hood, I took the damn hood off, I put a new hood on. Like, so you can see that people run into issues. You know, it's instead of in social media where you're trying to keep some kind of a persona, it takes and it removes all of the veils of you know, this is me, I'm pretty, and it brings in the reality of costuming, where we're doing more than just sewing. We're having to pattern, we're having to learn how to line, reinforce, fabricate. There's just so much involved depending on the type of build you have, and some people get overwhelmed, and that's why they give up, because they think there's, you know, I must be doing it wrong, it's taking so long. No, I mean, I've got a decade of experience and I still mess up on things. So it is great to have something like this too, because it also encourages people to keep trying.
It's also, for me, been really nice to see like the skill sets. The skills and the materials lists are from like the latest update. And you don't realize how much you put into a costume until you have to write out every single skill that you've done for a piece. And I ran out of spaces for my deuce for all the things that I did. Like, I ended up having to like not use 2 of the skills that I did because I had filled the whole thing out and ran out of room. And I'm like,
I did that too. I was like,
I did so much.
Like, we're the entire film crew. Hi.
But yeah, so this is a really great place to go, especially if you just need that extra community or need that extra organization because you're a chaos being and cannot keep things straight. This is a great way to go.
And did you want to like share stuff live, Sam?
I was working on it. I forgot to have it up. I'm so sorry. I'm so tired.
I mean, I can remove this from it and then share mine. So I'll just remove this and then
and you can share the app itself.
Yeah. Boom. So when you log in, this is the visual that you see, is you see an in progress or completed, but if you haven't separated it, then you're probably just going to have everything under in progress. But there is a work in progress feed, which we've been talking about. I actually kept this so that you can see that it's going to have you accept things, and it will walk you through what each of those items are. I like that they actually have a tutorial on how to use it, because a lot of new apps assume you already know how to use them. And so this helps with that. You can look at your progress. You can look at all progress. You can look at the feed that you've customized. So you can customize and filter your own feed based off of elements that you enjoy or things you want to look at. I need to adjust mine. And then you can also, they have like sponsors and stuff, so you can look at those too. But the planner itself is right here. This is, I'll look at, so the, should I show a completed one or should I show one that I'm about to work on right now?
I would, whenever you have something filled out, you can show.
Oh yeah, this is completely filled out. I just,
yeah, let's do this.
I have all the materials. So they let you do a primary image of what you're going to be working on. Then you can upload your references and see, I kept all of the tutorials for this one. I've only been accessing this on my phone in hopes to keep these tutorials live. But you can upload as many references as you want. For this particular character, wow, it's taking a while. Sorry, my internet's slow, but apparently I did have only 3 photos because there's not a lot of reference outside of the game. So I've been slowly but surely collecting references from in the game. But let me go back real fast because I did jump past the project info. And the project info, you can, the character name or, whatever you want to put. There's options for future cosplay. So if it's something you want to do in the future, you can log it and not forget about it. Because sometimes I do that, and I'm like, man, what did I want to do? That was so cool. Then you go for in progress, finished and waiting to shoot, and then completed. You can add the fandom that it's from, its origin, whether it's a full cosplay build, group, casual. There's all kinds of types, which is really nice. You can even throw a commission in here too, so that's nice too if you're trying to track when someone, you had someone build it. Budget, which I try to keep this as accurate as possible, but let's be honest, we always end up finding something. I'm like, oh, but that would look so pretty too. I'm not add this on here. This is a good way to track and figure out just how much you're spending to make costumes, and then your deadlines, and you get to adjust this progress bar however far you want to do. So it will send you, like you saw the little notes, good job, you've worked on your costume. So they're really sweet. I like that they kind of encourage you along the way too. This is the page. This is the color palette that you saw Chibi sharing. And these are like the primary materials and techniques. I haven't added hours, days, or weeks yet because all I've done is purchased all of the materials for this. And if you want to see, everything on that couch is just for that costume.
It's glorious.
And there's more. Yeah, there's more. I'm still missing the purse, and I still have to get. I forgot the sleeve is a different material. So yeah. Anyway.
I thought I knew what I was going to compete and work on next, and then I watched the first episode of Kurashitsuji, and now I'm rethinking my entire life.
Yeah. This is a good thing. Like here, I need to put. I'll show you guys like one real fast. I'll just do a title only. I'm gonna put get yourself a purse. I'm gonna save that.
Nice to see you. Thank you for coming in from Twitch. Haven't checked out Cosgear in a while. Yes, if you haven't been on Cosgear in a while, you prepare to be shocked. There's been a lot of updates, and there's a new update coming up.
It's amazing. And then this is the costume build. So this is where I started tracking. So I started tracking the fabric supplies. I scale fabric, iridescent trim, lace trim, and I started going through all the elements that I need, and I began purchasing things. I like that you can put in the list all the type of items that you purchased. This particular character has a lot of body jewelry that I'm going to have to make and sew and modify. I bought some really cheap jewelry that I can use as a base to understand how it's connected, but I'm probably not going to keep it. I'm going to build my own. I just needed to see how does jewelry work because I don't make jewelry a lot. So I needed like a sample. I was like, this is a $5 piece of crap jewelry, but at least it's connected properly and I'll know what to do. And so you have the ability to add sections where you would break up shopping, pattern making, and then you can add tasks beneath each section. So here I've got, like I said, I've got a section for pattern making, what I need to pattern, for crafting, for what I need to do for shoes, and test fitting. You can add new sections at any time. You can add new tasks.
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. This is a really good example of how good this app is. You can literally organize it however you want. Sam organized it by tasks to do. I organize mine by each piece. So like I have wig, headpiece, undershirt, overshirt, jacket. Like I broke mine into pieces. So I had like mock-up pattern and all that in the shirt piece. But you can see here, Sam actually organized it more by task-based stuff. So like cosplayer is meant to be completely organized by whatever you need and what your needs are for a cosplayer.
And it even has in here whether you need to buy that item, make it, or learn how to make it too. So I'm actually needing to add a few more tasks in here to learn. I haven't done jewelry making in so long that I actually kind of have to relearn it. So I like that it lets you track that time too, because a lot of people they underestimate the amount of time they're sinking into learning a technique.
I spent like almost 40 hours learning how to do digital art for Deuce and like just testing things out and learning and practicing. And I only logged a couple of those, but it was somewhere in the 40 hour range. And I went, oh, wow, that's a lot of time that gets added onto this.
Yep. Nope. I like that they allow you to do this. And then I started When you add images, you have the ability to add a title to it, and then it'll tell you the date that you uploaded it. So I like this because then I could say, these are all of my supplies. And then I'll start titling, this is patterning this is sewing this is crafting this. Maybe I 3D print an element because I'm experimenting with a really weird new translucent plastic. I have to see if it can stand my heat, my state. We'll find out.
Adventures.
The fact that it prints at 200, I think it'll be okay. I think it'll be okay. But those are useful. And then you can add events. Like, I'm going to wear this at a Phoenix Fan Fusion. The cool thing here too, if you don't know your own measurements, I don't think I have not edited this at all. Okay, I need to edit this because I've been losing a lot of weight and this is all inaccurate. But you can add your height, and it'll do it. If you know inches, you can start there, or centimeters. Either way. Shoe size, cup size. So this is good for reminding yourself of what your measurements are. Or if you are a commissioner, it's a way to make sure you have it stored somewhere and it's not going to accidentally get lost.
It's also really convenient because as a long-term seamstress, I've learned that a lot of people don't know how to actually take proper measurements. And the little like graphic they have there is a really good example of showing what each piece like you should be measuring for each step. And even I still sometimes have to message Sakura going, how do I measure this piece? Because I always forget certain ones. But
yeah, I got lucky. I was trained by tuxedo specialists, so I learned very early on how to do very proper fittings. That's the only reason why I knew how to measure when I first started cosplaying, is because I worked as a tuxedo expert.
But that's exactly
most people don't have that.
It's a really great, like, even if you don't know how to do it, it kind of does guide your hand, which is really nice, because it is, you don't realize how important your measurements are until you get them perfectly. And then you have like your golden child. I have like a pattern. Well, I have to make a new one, but like usually we have a pattern that's the golden child. It has all of the correct measurements. It fits us just right. And we can use this pattern to like alter to other pieces. And so like, as you're learning your measurements and stuff, this is a really good first step to getting that golden.
And if you have a dress form and you're taller than 5'6", there is an adjustment on the inside of the dress form that lets you extend the waist out a little bit. So the average American sizing from nape to the bottom of the groin is only 16 inches. Mine is 19 and a half. So I have to adjust that because otherwise my patterns give me the worst wedgie in the world. So like, you want to be mindful of length, in my opinion. Like, most of us get the circumference of things correct. It's length that we typically end up goofing up on.
And one of the key things for me is, I don't know how many times I forget to write down things before I go to Joann's to buy my fabric. And then I'm like, oh shoot, how much fabric do I need? I need my measurements. Well, now I can just open Cost Gear and be like, okay, that's the length I need. Let's do this. Like, it's such a great thing to have.
Yep. And then you can come into the progress update area and you can choose existing images to add to it, or you can showcase finished pieces. So I really like that. Like, you don't even, if you're not in the work in progress feed, you can just come straight to your profile and create one based off of that. So that's the planner area. And there's, like I said, in progress and completed. Under your profile, there's going to be cause plans. So cause plans will have everything. Then there's a portfolio, which is typically only your completed projects, the posts that you yourself have made, and then some information about you, and whether, the badges that you've earned and how active you are in the platform. I don't know the relevance or how much that's impacting things yet, but I'm sure as it grows, that might be of significance to determine if you're more active. Maybe you'll be able to answer some of those questions faster. Another thing you mentioned was the resources. So this is an entire menu. There's resources, there's a fabric finder area. I have to tell you, as someone who doesn't know a whole lot about fabric other than spandex and nylon and knit and vinyl, I know all the weird crap. Like the normal stuff like cotton and twill and canvas, I have no idea what its purpose is. So this has been very useful. And it will tell you like whether it dyes well, what the fiber is like, how much it stretches, if it can handle a structure, what its weight is. And so this is incredibly useful for people who are trying to bust outside of maybe their normal materials. And then the resources page has guides, photos, patterns, tools, all kinds of things. So that's, I think, an active cause gear file. Is there anything else anybody
No,
wants to see?
that was a really good showing of how the app works and all the like extra
And then
little
I'll
stuff
add
in it.
this back to the stage.
Yeah, no, it's such a useful app, and it seems intimidating because there's a lot going on, but it really does walk you through it. It shows you how the app works, and the community is lovely. They're lovely humans. They are more than likely, if you have a question, you can just come and ask it. All of us are there to help support each other, which is really nice. And if you're not ready to start the app, you can always join the Discord. It's a great place to start. You get to start to know some of the faces that are in the app. And if you just have a couple cosplay questions like, hey guys, I've never built a wig before. Can you help give me some wig suggestions? And like me and Hendo right now are actually making an active list of places to shop at, like safe, vetted cosplay places that you know you can buy things. And it's broken down by country. So it doesn't matter if you're from the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, Asia. You can find what you're looking for in companies that could be close to you. Or if you have to get out of country, you can see how long that wait time between ordering and getting your product is.
And then if you're interested in seeing how this works in person, because I know sometimes people have a harder time with like digital platforms, if you're going to Phoenix Fan Fusion at 1:30 p.m. on Friday at the event, we will be doing a live demo of CosGear's Cosplay Planner.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a really great, I think it's what the community has been looking for and asking for. I feel like we've all really just wanted a safe place that we can craft. Like, we're all nerds, we like building stuff, and this has kind of been the answer. And it's really helped me not only as like for my organization, my books and my build books, but it's just helped me as a cosplayer, like making more connections and finding more people. Because even in our Discord, we have a career conversation. So people that are either running panels or working events, or maybe they're a new judge, can go in there and ask questions. And it's a totally safe space to be like, hey, how do I make my build book? Or, hey, I've never judged this type of product before. How do people handle 3D prints? And stuff like that, which can really lead to some really awesome discussions together as a community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so once you actually have your stuff organized in, you know, CostGear or however you have chosen to do it, you can either build your build book while you're working on stuff or just wait till the end. I honestly usually wait till the end because I'm like, oh, well, it's all here now. And there are various ways to organize your build book based on what you like how you want to talk about your costume, as well as like the materials and techniques you've used. And personally, I have found the item-based way to be the most common, which would mean like, you know, shirt or like top stuff together, wig and, you know, hat stuff together, pants, shoes, etc. Because when I'm going through judging, I attempt to do head to toe or toe to head. Doesn't always work, but as long as there is a basically story in your build book that makes sense to someone looking at it, that's really what matters.
Yep.
And
also,
like,
if there's something you're really excited about, make sure you tell the judges too, because we like to get excited too.
Mm-hmm. And like in some cases, the technique-based breakdown also works well. So like if you have a bunch of dyed items, putting them all together on, you know, a page or two might be the way to go. Or like, you know, embroidery or a bunch of vinyl work.
It's helpful visually too. Sakura is going to show the way that they do their build books. Sometimes you can put like examples in the book, and if you're doing like one technique or like you dyed all this and you have an example, putting them all on the same page will show exactly what you did and all the pieces that are linked to it. So instead of being like, okay, well, the skirt was dyed and the sleeves were dyed, it's the skirt was dyed, the sleeves were dyed, and here's all the little like accessory things as well. So they can see like a wide array of like, oh, this was this technique and it was used through different pieces, which is a big bonus if you're competing.
Mm-hmm. And also the hybrid model, I haven't used it a lot, but it can be very useful if, example, you've built, you know, a bunch of items and their like top finishing is the same. Example, if you did a bunch of sewing work and both the pants and the shirt have embroidery items on them, then putting the embroidery together at the end is a good way to blend those two techniques without your book seeming extremely repetitive, because you want to have things as clear and concise as possible while still explaining like what you made.
You want to try to tell a story with your book in the sense of the least amount of words you have, the better in some cases. Not all cases. There are cons that have certain rules and you have to follow whatever the cons rules for the book is. But it's very helpful for judges, especially smaller events. We don't have time to read every single thing that you write in a book. So if you have a picture of these are my Hong Kong seams and this is how I finished it, and that's all you say, these are my Hong Kong seams, but you have a picture of them, they can see one, how cleanly it is and how well you like executed that technique. And they know exactly what it is without having to read a whole bunch of text. And they might miss if you wrote, oh, while doing this piece, I made Hong Kong scenes, which I flipped over and blah, blah, blah. Like they might miss some of the details if you have a long paragraph versus just a couple of words to get your point across.
Yeah. No, that's the biggest thing. Admittedly, I should probably include a little bit more text than I do in my build books, and I'm trying to get a bit better at that. But
I
like,
tend to just do like you and I, Soccer, are probably the same, where it's like a buzzword, and I remember what that buzzword means, and then I elaborate.
No, that can be extremely handy. There's also, with some recent like competition questions of like brain. It is early. I'm still working on coffee. Basically, like listing things that you didn't make can make it a lot easier for judges to better evaluate your costume. So, example, if you bought your shoes, list bought shoes, you know, made modifications if you did, or like did not make leggings. And that can help judges focus more on what you actually did do versus what you didn't do.
Yeah, because I've seen some people actually completely cobble their shoes, and it blew my mind. But then they never talked about it. And the only reason I knew they cobbled is because I had enough time. I received the digital ebook like a month in advance. I'd had enough time to read through it. And I'm thinking, why didn't you mention that? And I tell them, I'm like, make sure you tell someone you cobbled your own shoe, because that is intense.
I mean, that's honestly one of the reasons to have a build book, though, because in your time, like, I know I especially forget a lot of like my wig pieces, or like in some costumes I have a tail. I completely forget to talk about that. And judges sometimes ask, oh, well, what about this? But it's like, if they don't, those items are in the build book that they can look at later and be like, oh, wait, this person actually did make this, but they forgot to talk about it.
And not only to like mention the honesty part, like there's been, if anybody's in the competition community, they know that there's been some fire about who's built what and what things were built versus what things are commissioned, etc. So being just straight honest with your judges, saying these are the things I didn't do. Usually I'll open up when talking to the judges and these are the things I didn't do, get it out of the way. But if I forget, at least it's in my build book. On top of that, like I know Sakura, when you competed in Langa, the judges didn't believe that you built your shirt. Like you literally had to show them pictures of you working on the piece because of how like they honestly thought it was bought because of how accurate it was.
Yeah, that's a lot of times why you need to document your progress, because I know someone years ago that competed at SoccerCon, and she didn't take pictures of early on things, and the judges would not believe that she made what she did. And it was like, oh boy, that's like, it can be really rough, but just goes to show that documenting stuff, especially for competition, is absolutely needed.
With that in mind, make sure to take gremlin shots. I'm the worst at this, but you need to be taking those 3 a.m. I'm exhausted pictures of yourself. Because you need proof that you are the one building these things. So usually if I'm like doing a die pot, I'll take a picture of like a selfie with the die pot, or I'll have a friend take a picture of me while I'm working on something when we do like con like work things, or if we're doing a group thing, just because it does show that like, yeah, hey, I was working on these things. It was me, I promise. Like I'm not trying to cheat the system. I love what I do.
Yeah, I have a bunch of images of me flipping off my costume, and I blur out the flip off, but it's more of like me going, I will succeed. It is just like my tradition of flipping off my costume. Like
Yep.
giving it the finger, and then I seem to do better because if I don't give it the finger, it revolts against me. So it's like me putting that costume in its place.
That is glorious. And also, like, you can include items in your pictures too that like marks it as yours.
Like
you
it's
know,
your house, there's a couch, there's something else that they
Yeah.
can see. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, which is very handy. And like build books are there for judges to look through it, but don't make it too long because they will lose interest. Personally, I found like most of my build books, 10 pages is my sweet spot to explain and show enough things without it being too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 to 10 is about right for me. And one of the tips that I learned, this is actually from Kira Lee Cosplay, if anybody follows her. My cover of my build book is going to be my references. So then the judges, I can hand them my build book and they have the reference right in their face. So they know exactly how to like compare. And I didn't get to do this with Deuce because I had not, like, I don't have any pictures of Deuce. I still don't have pictures of Deuce. But on the back side of your build book, you can put a picture of you in the full costume. So then the judges can open your book up and take the reference and then look at you and compare them. If this is a competition that focuses on like accuracy to the character design, Kira does this. She has a whole video on YouTube about it. Like I would go watch it. I watched that when my mind is blown. And so now I try to do that with my build books because as a judge who has been in that situation going, oh, I wish I remembered what that piece looked like after they've left, having that like back-to-back reference plus your image is so helpful.
Mm-hmm. No, and like when you're doing your build book, make it make sense in like organization as well as the design elements. And I'm so excited to show actually allocate impulses because their usage of blue, pink, and red to show like what parts of the costumes were one exclusively and then together is just like it's so visually beautiful and doesn't need an explanation, but it makes sense because they organized it so well. And like adding things into your build book that are like related to your costume without being like overly cluttered. So if you're example, the color palette with Koskier, if you've picked those colors, then it's like, oh well, maybe I should use those in my build book to keep things together and like show that your build book was also inspired by your costume. Kind of thing. But just make sure to keep it simple enough that it's not cluttered, because if it looks cluttered,
and most conventions won't give you more than 5 minutes. At Phoenix Fan Fusion, for instance, you're only given 2 minutes because we receive the build books a month out. So it's really just a last look. So you're really going top to bottom of any additional changes you've made since that last month.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we can get into actually showing some build books.
Yeah,
which is exciting.
Yeah, so this is mine. This is my Lucy Doocy. As you can see, I put my references on the very front cover. It's not pretty. It's not like, oh, this is the character, but they can like, now my judges can look very clearly at what pieces each breakdown is and know exactly what they're looking for in the piece. My techniques page is the one with the most text. That's just your bullet point. Hey, these are the techniques I used. This is the material I used. These are the things to feature, to remember. I did break it down by like technique because I had so many techniques that it just felt easier than trying to break it down by each piece. I also had a million pieces, so it would have just looked bad if I was trying to do every single piece. But yeah, this is kind of a basic first glance for the judges to have an idea of like, okay, this is what went into this piece.
Mm-hmm. Also, though, for organization, you can put, instead of a techniques page, these like little descriptions and stuff with the items as well. That's another.
I just, for my brain, I like it this way because then I can like quick glance through things, which makes me feel better. But it is totally like, if you do it through the book with each piece, it also looks amazing.
Mm-hmm. No, I prefer the techniques and materials page myself, but it's personal preference.
Yeah, so like this is just an idea of what those images look like. So you can see very, very minor, like I don't use a lot of text. It's very much picture based. I do use apps to like better my art though. So like I use just like your basic cropping image thing. So I can put images together because you can see the tunic piece. I had 3 different mockups for that. So I added all the mockups into kind of like one group picture and then labeled each one so they could see the differences between each mockup because it wasn't very important, but I wanted to show how much work went into the mockup. And then like an idea of like, so those were the digital cuts that I had to make for the piece. I just put them on there as like one of the images of here's all the digital cuts that went into this piece. It's just in my head, this was a nice way to organize it. It is very simple, but judges can look at it and go, there's the pattern, there's the mock-up, there's them working on it. Here's how the mock-ups led into making the final piece. And I tend to not put finished pieces completely in there because they're going to see me finished, or I'll have the finished piece on the very back. So I usually use the focus of my the internal book to focus on things that the judges can't see and my mock-up process and like each piece that I'm doing, so they get an idea of the work that went into it that they don't see.
Anything else on Deuce?
I think that's, Deuce was, I can tell you, the most important thing. So the thing I learned that has been my best friend with when I figured out how to do with Deuce, no card. I actually go into my judging with a card with everything from like head to toe. And I don't list like details. I just usually write each piece down so I don't forget any of the pieces, or like I'll star a technique that I'll forget to talk about. Cause I've been judged in him 3 times now. So like by the 3rd time I had realized the things I forgot to talk about. And so judges will always allow you to have a cheat sheet. So like I have to use a card with Deuce because of how much that goes into him. And that's not necessarily a build book thing, but I made my card my cheat sheet while I was building my build book, because as I was putting things into my build book, I'd write them on my card. So there I'm good.
No, it's very, very handy, especially if the judges want to take your build book and look through it, so you can't like flip through it.
You don't have the thing where you're like, because I still panic when I talk to judges.
Yep.
But that's it.
Okay, and then I've got... Okay, so this is an older build book that is not digital. So same kind of idea that I've put my references and stuff and information on the front. I've also included the timestamp of how long it took me. I like to include materials wherever possible. So for this particular one, I've included it on the page with the items that they're on. But I've also done it where it's like the first page being materials and techniques. And like this, the undershirt was something in this costume that was really hard to see, like how it was finished. So I basically did like, yes, this is what went into this. So even if they couldn't see these pieces, that is something that I could talk about, which a lot of times, like the build book is such a glorious resource in that respect. And when you're doing like things that, again, judges can't see, example, I did like a in sleeve puff thing, so my sleeves would forever be puffy. So I included all that work because they wouldn't have known that otherwise, as well as in this case, I used magnets to attach some items, and that's something the judges would never, see or necessarily like, brain. If you can't easily show them, put it in your build book because it'll give you more points if it's executed well. And in this respect, I used magnets because it was an extremely clean way to move things, like take it on and off, and it was handy. And then again, another physical build book, more with the techniques. I did it all on one page this time. So all of the items I used that are not fabric, then all the fabric items, and then I included all of the bling, just to show how many different stones that I used. And then another example of something that they don't necessarily see, I made Frankenvest, which was literally a vest back. I think it ended up with like 3 fronts. But that's something that they wouldn't see because all the vest structure is hidden under a coat. So that's a strategy to put things that they wouldn't really see usually. And then this is one of my most recent books that I did that was digital. So this is what I mean with like taking elements of your costume and putting them into the build book. And I tend to keep it around like the edges because it doesn't look cluttered, but it gives a more coherent look to the build book. And I find it useful sometimes to put like if you're figuring out how a costume goes together, a breakdown. And this is like your rubric of, well, this is how you plan to make it. If this ends up becoming not relevant, don't include anything like this, but I find it extremely useful for when I'm trying to figure out stuff, as well as showing the judges this was my thought process on making this. And since this one was a digital one, I just listed my materials and what I did to a lot of the items because there's a lot of overlap for this particular book. So that's why I chose to do just a list, and then I explained where things were basically. And then again with the include what the judges can't see. So I had made an obi piece. So I included like how it was like held on because there was an item over top of it that hid that, as well as joining, this is actually felt. So I had to join felt to make it long enough. And then I actually made an entire corset underneath it to help the structure. Again, that's something that the judges wouldn't see. And to show that that is something that I did, I literally had my measurements and paper, and then I showed the steps until it was basically about 75% done. And usually that's where I no longer take pictures unless there's like a drastic change, because you're going to be presenting it, and 75 plus like to 100, usually not a heck of a lot changes depending on the item. But yeah, that's my stuff. And
one of the things that you didn't mention before you geek out, because I know you're going to geek out.
Okay.
What Sakura usually does, what she didn't mention, is she'll take a piece of the fabric that's undyed and then a piece of the dyed fabric and put a piece in the build book because they specialize in dyeing. And so showing what the before and after is a big perk.
Yes. Thank you for that. I was just excited to get to these guys. So
we're probably going to go a little over today. It's fine.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So Allocate Impulse, they were the best in show winners at SoccerCon this year. And I absolutely love their build book for the respect that, so it's perfect blue. So beyond these 2 pages, there's a lot of blue incorporated, but the blue means that the items that they worked on were done for both costumes. If it was pink, like if the title's pink, it was Mima. If it was red, it's Rumi. And it's very easy to see that, as well as they have front, full front, side, back. Same for this. So you're able to see all of the parts of the costume, which is very, very useful for judges. Not always possible with costumes, but if you can include these types of references.
And if you would like to hunt these 2 down on I will grab the link to the Allocate, but it's also, so it's Aki V on Instagram and Peppy Rain are the cosplayers. So this is also a good example of a group cosplay done together.
Yes. Because it was both of them. So like this is their corset, and this is a great way to show like these are things that went into this specifically. So this is this text. So they have said things as concise as possible and crediting. So where they got the pattern, showing the changes that they made, and then a brief description of what actually went on. Same with this. It's very concise, but it shows exactly the work that went into it, because this is where they started. This is, you know, partway through, and this is getting towards the end, and this is how it's finished. So it's, I love their build book because it's so well put together, and like they have the cute little hearts and stuff, which relates to parts of the movie, and like it's so well done. And like something like this, they their skit had like a blood element, and this was, I believe, held on by a magnet, and like having that, oh yeah, this is not attached to the costume, is again a brilliant, you know, way to show in the build book actually what you did. And this actually goes to what Sam said. They cobbled their own shoes. So of course they detailed what they actually did for that, and showed that both of them have different foot sizes. So they had to make, you know, two very unique pieces. And it's this kind of stuff that you may forget to talk about that absolutely will get you more points in competition. And then here is, again, Rumi. So, you know, this is related to only one of the costumes, while this is related to two of the costumes. And then this one has a little bit more text, but a lot went into it. Because, like, they have, I think it's Weed Eater cord holding this together, and that's a very innovative use of material. So if you do something like that, include that in your build.
So much stronger than people give it credit for.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm going to switch to that. I usually use fishing line because fishing line is so much stronger than like crafting lines and stuff. But when they said the Weed Eater stuff, I'm like, yes.
Well, they needed it to break because this was a breakaway. Yeah. And that breaks fairly, well, not easy, but like it worked for them, and it's just brilliant. And again, this is just this was Mima only. And they actually pointed like, oh, this is related to this is related to this, and this is like an overview. Again, it looks very organized. It's not cluttered, but it gets the point across of this is what we made. This is what went into it. And this is how things are finished that you can't see, because I believe you can't see that. And like, this is their progress of the horsehair. So, no,
I mean, I've even had people make their own undergarments and take photos of it on like a mannequin. So, because they're shy, they don't want to show themselves. That's fine. And they put it on a mannequin. They're like, look, I made my own underwear. Sweet.
No, that's yeah. But that's...
you want to share yours now?
Wait, me?
Yeah. Do you have a build book?
Oh yeah, so I have two. I was going to show one real fast of like baby Sam and what she thought build books should look like versus a few years later I figured out like what they probably should include. So my build books have been digital since the beginning. I started using Instructables a really long time ago, and so I've always had Instructables. And I started with creating armor with Warbler. And apparently 59,000 people have looked at this. I'm nervous now. You guys, there's better ones. Look at the better ones. But this started with me just trying to figure out how to use the product in Arizona. This is before they tightened up the recipe, and so now it can handle heat a lot better. But I was just trying to figure out how to do it. So I broke it down with just like what tools I used. I don't have as many photos. I did include like the patterns, and then when I cut it out of foam and when I cut it out of Warbler, and I have some basic, really short paragraphs, but I don't have a lot of photos. And I did have some good details on like how to sandwich it. It's just, you see that I keep jumping steps because I'm like, I didn't even record or take pictures of the fact that I went and bought 3 different sizes of nylon wire or nylon rope from Home Depot. And then I had to hand wrap it in Warbler, and I had to get special automotive gloves because the Warbler was melting onto my hand. So I wish I'd like shown people, hey, this is a danger that you might encounter, but you learn stuff along the way. And then eventually all I had was this photo. So this was not a bad first tutorial. It's not a bad first build book to show how I built my own armor, but I also never took photos of the corset that I have in here. Like I took a corset, stripped all the fabric out of it and relined it with leather. I made my arms, my leather arm socks. I made boot covers that you can't see that are under here. So there were things that I didn't track. Well, a few years later, I figured out you should be tracking a lot more because they're going to ask you a lot more questions than you expect. And so I did Yojimbo. And this build book is on the Worbla website. So it is actually on Worbla itself. They did sponsor the product for this build. And even with them sponsoring the product, it was still $400. So there are some builds that are just going to end up being really tough for you. But this one, I made sure that I had the artist's rendition that I was curious to replicate, but also the original character that it was based off of, and then my rendition. Like Chibi said, having that image to show all three versions is usually very useful. And then this time I broke down the supplies. So the tools that I used, and I broke it down into materials that I used. And I included everything. This was a really big build. It took me 3 months to build the first time, and then I went back in and reworked it for another 3 months. So 6 months of work. I did the recording like Sakura recommended, and not only did I do recording, but I also took photos of everything and stills from most of those videos that I captured.
You competed in a much larger con for this piece too, right? Like there was a lot.
I went to a national championship at Los Angeles. Wow. Yeah. So, and I placed second in Journeyman in a national championship, which is very, by the way, like if you're competing, make sure you pay attention to the type of championship you're competing in. There are levels depending on the countries you go to. Some of them are regional, some are national, and some are international. And depending on those levels, it can increase the expectations for your build books. I know you guys have mentioned that before, but a lot of people, I think, don't understand that regional is typically just going to be a local event. It's going to be governed by different rules because every con tends to be different. Whereas national, there's a set of standards that every state has to apply by, or every country has to apply by. And international is the same. It's just it tends to be even more aggressive with its standards. So they tend to get a bit more complicated the more you include a global perspective. So this is, I'd say, a build book where I included a lot of detail. I do have a summary PDF that I extracted from this where I just took these images and then real quick on the side just threw the supplies and tools and got rid of all of the paragraphs so that the judges wouldn't have to go through all of that. But this was also because it was a national championship. I had the privilege of being able to send this link over to the judges in advance so that they could look through it earlier. And that's another reason why I mentioned I like having some of these digital ones, because if there are a lot of judges in the room on like D23 and some of the other cons have gone from just 2 to 3 judges to like 6, and there's a huge panel. So it can be tricky for them to share. And that's why I also like to try to have a digital ready as well, so that they can just access it through whatever mobile device or maybe laptop they have with them and still be able to navigate it without having to worry about not seeing the build book, physical book. But there's boobies. Boobs. But yeah, this is a book that I would say I am not going to go through all of it. I will just post the link in. But this is if you're going on a much larger competition level, national or international, that meets most of the standards for those. Whereas the first one I did would absolutely be fine for regional. You're just going to probably get asked a lot more questions.
Mm-hmm. No, and to add on to that, if you are doing like a larger competition, there are sometimes actual guidelines to these are things you need to include in your build book and make sure you have those, or you could actually face disqualification.
And they also want to know if a material was sponsored. Like I said, my Worbla was sponsored. It would have cost me $200 additional, but because it was sponsored, they're like, well, did they sponsor anything else? I'm like, no, they just sent me 2 sheets of Worbla. Unedited, unfettered, just a whole roll of Worbla. And they're like, oh, well, I guess that doesn't do much for you. I'm like, other than save me money, you're right, it doesn't do much for me. But it was very useful because it saved me money. It was already $400 deep and it was dying.
I think one of the most important things to remember is if you have a question, if you're not sure if you need a build book, if you're not sure what the build book's supposed to look like, reach out to your coordinator because they can tell you.
Absolutely. And the coordinator should be more than happy to answer. If you are interested in being like a cosplay coordinator or director or manager, I highly recommend shadowing people. It is a very time-consuming, overwhelming job and role. And there's a lot more involved with it than you'd expect. It's more than just getting judges and more than just making sure the rules are set and that everyone understands things. There's a lot of communication and business-related acumen you're going to have to be familiar with.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's all I have here. And I know we've gone a little bit over, but if you guys have any questions, let us know. But I think we can start wrapping up. I mean, this has been a really good discussion.
Yes, this has been really fun. Thank you guys for letting me join you.
Yeah, Sakura and me are very passionate about this. If you can't notice, I've been getting really into competitions and doing more competitive stuff. Just for me, it's like to see myself grow. Like it's very exciting to see from like where I started to where I'm at now. Like winning Deuce, really, that costume made me cry on so many occasions, but finally like showing that I put a lot of work into this and other people think I put a lot of work into it was a really rewarding experience. And because of it, I ended up making a bunch of other friends and it became such a community thing. It was the first time I started using cost gear for stuff and it just got easier and easier. And now it's such a fun thing to do. I love competing and I take it quite seriously, but it's just if you're a cosplayer that want to like kind of like show your growth, or if you want to build something for more than just building it, even if you just join a little local con, it's really fun. And a build book is a good way to have the documentation of how hard you work on a piece.
And it's fun to look back as well on like, oh, this is how I started. This is how things are going. It's really rewarding a lot of times, I find.
And I am going to say, if you are newer, or even if you're just on a really strict budget, don't be afraid to go to like thrift stores or consignment stores and take fabric from them and upcycling fabric. I mean, I've taken an entire dress, stolen all the satin from it, like, and used it to make an entirely different garment. Don't think you have to get all the best materials. Like cosplay shouldn't be based off privilege. It should be based off of skill and technique that you learn yourself.
That's exactly it. Fur's super expensive. If I ever find any like furry pillows or something at thrift stores where you can just wash the hell out of them and they're good to use, like peak. It is more about what you put into it. A judge should never be judging based on your actual physical appearance. It should be based entirely on what you're building and what you're bringing that day. And so if you just like building it, and even if you're a crafter, you can always be the builder and then have a model too. A lot of conventions welcome having a crafter who has a model wear their piece. You can always build something and then tell them, hey, I'm the one who built it. Here's how I built it. You might have to talk to the judges, but you could have somebody else wear it on stage if that's not for you. Like the competition community has grown so much over the last handful of years.
Mm-hmm. To add on to that, though, with like reduce, reuse, recycle, judges should never judge you on the materials that you have used. It should be your workmanship and how you have used the materials, not, if someone gets like a true silk Dupioni and then someone else gets a polyester one, that should absolutely not mean anything at all. No. It's just your choice of materials. It's how you use it.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that's one to be mindful of. If you do encounter that in a convention, make sure you provide feedback to whomever can accept it. Because that is, that's something I want to talk about when I do like a little series on bias and unconscious bias. I've encountered it about 6 times in the past year, where there just was bias that should not have been present. And I think that people just simply are unaware of it. So kind of bringing it into like the biases that cosplayers encounter in the community, making people more aware of that might be something that we can do on one of our talks, because I think it's important to know that everyone should be on equitable footing.
Absolutely.
And like, as an example, don't feel bad if you're chimping out on your big costume. My next big cosplay build was going to be Malleus Overblot, but he's a really expensive piece. It's going to take a lot of time. And I am going to build him, but it's probably going to be in pieces where I can slowly buy it because it is a very expensive piece. It has lighting, it has EVA, it has Warbler. It's going to be big. But now I'm kind of changing gears and I've been thinking about another competition build that's going to be much more budget friendly for me. While I'm slowly working on Malleus, I can build something else where I still feel like I'm doing something. I'm still doing what I love. I'm still building for a competition. It's just now I know I can afford it in a much more manageable place and get used to my new crafting space instead of trying to do this big, huge build that's like the biggest I've ever done with a bunch of techniques I've never done. I'm picking something that I'm like, okay, this is bite-sized. I know almost all the techniques. I actually have quite a bit of the fabric myself that I can just like pull out of my bins that I have extra of. And I know the fabric I do need the most of is cheap. So I'm probably going to pick this costume while I'm waiting. And like, don't ever, that should not sway.
No.
The only thing that should sway what you build is how passionate you are about it.
And I want us to give some advice to judges too. Judges, a lot of people, when you get to judging, it's because you've competed a lot or you've built some kind of a rapport, or people trust in your judgment for being unbiased and looking at it through a neutral perspective, and just for the skills that people have used and implemented, right? Or difficult materials, because there are some materials that are just a pain in the butt and you're like, wow, you really wanted to do that. All right. But one thing for judges is make sure you yourself are occasionally maybe going to these competitions and competing again, to remind yourself of what it feels like to be judged, to remind yourself of what it feels like to be in that green room and have that nervous energy, and maybe what it feels like to go on stage. And it could also give you some insight into conventions in your area that maybe could use some more help, or maybe you can bring new ideas from other cons and say, hey, I saw this, could we try this out? So I always recommend, even if it's just once a year, even if you think you're a master level competition, even if you're journeyman, it doesn't matter. If you're judging others, in order to make sure that you are not putting yourself on a pedestal above them, that you're staying at the same level and that they are people too, I recommend still competing so that you know what it feels like to be in that position.
100%.
Yeah, like honestly, that could be an entire episode of like judge etiquette or like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I see you, Apprentice. You said I definitely feel anxiety about material occasionally, so this is really nice to hear. Yes, no, absolutely. As an FYI, my Deuce costume. So the polyester is the most expensive of any of my materials I used on it, and it was only like $15 a yard, and I usually think 3 yards. The white is literally all muslin, like $2 a yard muslin, because that was the color that was the most accurate and the material I trusted to work with the most. Like, it literally does not matter what material you're working with. If it has a really gorgeous finish, that's all you want. Like my headpiece, it's literally cheap plastic. Like, it's just a piece of like wobbly plastic. And the first time I competed, I was using cardboard for a lot of my details. They were just prettied up. Like, 100% does not matter what the material is. In fact, I love seeing people who use cardboard and make it not look like cardboard, because I'm like, how did you do that? So like, don't ever feel bad about that.
I'm scared. I've never used this like.
What is that?
I don't know. It's kind of like chiffon, but not. It's weird. This is translucent, and when I tried sewing through it, oh my gosh, I'm glad I have testing, but this is a trim that ends up, when you release it, it does this like feathering effect. And I have to trim it and melt it and try to create like fish fins coming off a dress.
No, it looks like iridescent organdy. That is such
it is
butt fabric.
And I don't have a serger, so we're going to take a little piece and we're going to test some things. So don't be afraid of materials. Just know that you always want to take a little piece and you want to run it through your sewing machine and see what it loves and see what it hates.
I always order or buy a little extra fabric just to test, especially if it's something I'm not used to working with.
This was $23 for 2 yards.
Well,
this is what I have. I'm not spending more. I just wanted the dang color.
We've definitely outstayed our welcome.
Sorry,
thank you, everyone who's hung out with us. As you can tell, we're very passionate about this kind of topic, but it was a lovely time. We had a great time actually building that presentation, because now we can use it for panels. So we're like, heck yeah. But if there's anything you guys want to see more of, if you have questions, or if you would like a better digital copy of our build books to look through, reach out to us. I never mind sharing my build book. It's very helpful. I've looked through a million build books to get the idea that I have today. So yeah, if you want to see any of our stuff a little bit closer, or have a better time looking through it so you can read it better or see the pictures better, totally reach out to us. If you guys have any questions about cost gear or are interested in cost gear at all, you can also reach out to us. I am currently helping work on the event planner. So if anybody has like, hey, I've always wanted to see this in an app, reach out to me, because we're trying to figure out what cosplayers want to see in event building. But yeah, so I guess we'll close out. I'm Chibi Raincloud. Thank you so much. I'm from Seattle area. You can find me literally as Chibi_Raincloud on everything. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitch. I think, yeah, that's cost gear. It's all that. But I guess my last bit of advice is, if you want to do it, just do it. Like, if it's yourself, stop. Like, if you're telling yourself you're not ready, I don't know enough, I don't have the right materials, like, do it. I can't help, like, I have stopped myself for years doing builds that I've been wanting to do forever. And now I finally, after doing Deedlit a couple years ago with Sam, I was like, what was stopping myself? Like, literally, I was stopping myself. That's it. Like, nothing else was stopping me. And that costume was hard, but I was so happy with the outcome. So like, if there's something you're passionate about and you want to do a big build, whether you're competing in it or not, you just want to make it, do it. Get started. Start buying little things. Go to the thrift store. Buy some cheap fabric. Work on your mock-ups. Just do what you can to build that costume slowly. You don't need a deadline. You can just start working on the thing you want.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm Sakura Elric. You can find me on Facebook under Sakura Elric Cosplay, Instagram under Sakura Elric. That's all I can remember right now. And Chibi and I have a joint account both on Facebook and Instagram under matchablossom.cos, where we're going to be posting more stuff that we are planning on doing together, as well as trying to get more like whip stuff. And
show some love, please. We just opened it up. So but yeah, this is where we're going to share where we do our panels, what panels we run, any of our meetup content, and whenever we feel like streaming and doing stuff and sharing our whips, that's also going to go on there.
Yep. And I'm Thermal Cosplay. You can find me at thermalcosplay.com, and all my links are there. I'm probably more active, I'd say, on Instagram or Facebook, but in general, I'm not as active right now because I'm building something at the moment. I'm networking with a lot of people. We're trying to build a very large local community of makers so that people have more resources. And so that means it's taking my time away from social media just to make sure everyone's got like a good support to be in. But yeah, this is Cause Talk Live. You can find us on causetalk-live.com. And once again, we are sponsored by Age of Radio. We stream twice a month. We stream one Sunday a month at 12 p.m. and one Wednesday a month at 6 p.m. We will be streaming again on Wednesday, April 24th at 6 p.m. Arizona time, and we're going to be talking with Wolfie. Wolfie is an California-based cosplayer, and they have created this cause for creating equity among cosplayers in their area, and we're going to talk about their cause.
That's exciting.
So thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Happy Sunday. Bye, everybody.